She was too broke to buy her son a Thanksgiving turkey, but a wealthy stranger offered her something far more valuable than a meal. He offered her a chance at love. It all started with Rachel Morgan in the freezer aisle of the King Street Piggly Wiggly, her eyes locked on the price of the tiniest turkey they had, $23.47. She only had $19.12 to her name until payday, which was still 4 long days away. Her payday wasn't for another 4 days, meaning it would come after Thanksgiving, and her son Jaden's 9th birthday was just 2 months from now. Right then, he was probably back at their little apartment, over the old bookstore she worked at, sitting at their cramped kitchen table, finishing his schoolwork. That very morning, he looked up at her with so much hope in his eyes and asked if they could have a real turkey this year, just like all the other kids at school were talking about. She just smiled and told him, maybe the small white lie that felt heavier than any she'd told in a very long time. Family, welcome back to Tales That Touch, the channel that shares moving stories all about love. Because let's face it, you can't run from love or from death. You never know when, how, or where they'll find you. There's no such thing as too soon or too late. For all our first-time viewers, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss a single moment of what's coming up. And to everyone who's back with us, again, we can't thank you enough. Your support means the world. Now make sure you stick around for the end of this one. Drop a comment below with your thoughts and give this video a thumbs up. All right, back to the story. Rachel's fingers were starting to go numb. Being in the freezer aisle always made her hands throb. It threw her right back to that brutal winter she and baby Jaden spent huddled in her car, wrapped in every single blanket they had. That had been 8 years ago, right after Jaden's father walked out and her own mother passed away, all in the same devastating month. She had fought her way out of that dark place, one tiny step at a time. But on days like today, it felt like she was right back on the brink. She slid the turkey back and grabbed a chicken instead, $7.99. She could swing that. It wasn't the turkey he wanted, but she'd just tell Jaden it was a special kind of Charleston tradition. And he would buy it because at 8 years old, he still believed his mom had all the answers. "Oh, excuse me, my bad." A deep, apologetic man's voice sounded from right behind her as a shopping cart gently tapped her on the hip. Rachel spun around automatically, putting on her polite retail smile, but it froze on her face before it could fully form. The guy was tall, probably around 6'2", with dark, messy hair that looked like he'd been running his fingers through it all day long. He had on a pair of jeans that likely cost more than her entire month's rent, and a plain navy sweater that somehow made his blue eyes appear almost stormy gray. He was a white guy, maybe in his mid-30s, with one of those faces you'd expect to see on a magazine cover or a massive billboard. "Seriously, I am so sorry," he repeated, pulling his card away. "I was completely spaced out." "It's fine," Rachel squeaked out, holding the chicken tightly. "Really no big deal." He flashed a smile, and it felt surprisingly real, not practiced at all. His gaze then shifted from the chicken she was holding down to her frayed tote bag with the strap she'd been meaning to fix for the last 3 months. And then his eyes met hers again. She could feel him taking her in, not just looking, but really seeing her. A blush crept up her neck. Picking out a turkey, he asked, which had to be the most obvious question anyone could ask in a grocery store the week of Thanksgiving. "Something along those lines," Rachel replied, trying to sound breezy. "You too." "To be honest, I'm completely clueless," he chuckled, raking a hand through his already disheveled hair. "My assistant normally takes care of all this, but she went to see her family, so I boasted that I could handle one little Thanksgiving shopping trip. Clearly, I was delusional." His shopping cart was totally bare except for a single can of cranberry sauce and what appeared to be a frozen pizza. "Wow, that's some feast you've got going there," Rachel blurted out without thinking. He glanced down at his cart and let out another laugh, a genuine one that made the corners of his eyes crinkle up. "Yeah, I'm nailing it," he said sarcastically. "Got any tips for a guy who has never cooked a turkey before and is attempting to host his very first proper Thanksgiving?" Rachel knew she should just offer a polite excuse and leave. She had a chicken to pay for with money. She barely had a son at home waiting for her, and a million reasons to avoid getting into a conversation with this clearly rich guy in his sad, empty cart. And yet, the way he was looking at her, not past her or through her, but directly at her, made her stop. "Your first proper Thanksgiving," she found herself asking. "How is that even possible?" "Oh, my family's tradition was always the country club," he explained. And the tone of his voice hinted that it wasn't a fond memory. "You know, catered food, champagne, the whole 9 yards. I'm hoping to do something different this year. Well, Rachel heard herself say step one is probably to put back the frozen pizza. And while canned cranberry sauce is okay, homemade is so much better. Homemade, he looked completely terrified. That sounds way too complicated. It's just cranberries, sugar, and water. It's likely the simplest dish you'll make. Okay, but what about the main event? The turkey, he clarified. I've heard these nightmare stories about people who forget to thaw them and end up giving their whole family food poisoning. And just like that, Rachel was smiling. It was a genuine smile, the kind usually reserved only for Jaden or for those fleeting moments when things didn't feel so overwhelming. Who are you cooking for? Actually, it's just for me. He tried to sound nonchalant, but a shadow of something else crossed his expression. It was loneliness. Rachel recognized it instantly. She'd seen that same look staring back at her from the mirror on too many mornings to count. So you're making an entire Thanksgiving feast for one pretty sad, huh? Yet he said it with a smile. Not sad at all, more like brave, or maybe hopeful. Rachel juggled the chicken she was holding, switching it to her other hand. The package was beginning to thaw, its chill seeping into her skin as it grew slick. Listen, she began. When it comes to turkey, the size is everything. You don't want a 20-pounder for just yourself unless your plan is to be eating it until the new year. Got it. What's next? This was her cue to leave. A simple, nice talking to you, and she could be on her way. But instead, she heard herself explaining the ins and outs of brining the ideal oven settings, the debate between convection and conventional heat, and how the true key to a perfect turkey was just a little patience and a reliable thermometer. He hung on her every word as if she were revealing the secrets of the universe, not just kitchen basics, nodding along and chiming in with questions. And right in the middle of her tutorial on turning pan drippings into gravy, it dawned on Rachel that she was actually having a good time. When was the last time she talked to another adult about something other than rent shift changes or Jaden's parent-teacher meetings? Wow, you're a real pro at this, he commented once she was done. Are you a professional chef? Hardly, just a mom who's seen her fair share of Thanksgiving dinners. She left out the part about last year's holiday meal, consisting of instant stuffing and green beans from a can. It was all her budget allowed for. Even then, she had done her best to make it magical, lighting candles and playing Jaden's favorite songs while they imagined a grand feast. Well, you've just rescued me from a guaranteed catastrophe. I really appreciate it. He hesitated for a moment. My name's Michael, by the way, Michael Carter. He offered his hand and Rachel had to juggle the chicken package once more to free hers. His palm was warm and his handshake was solid yet gentle. A pleasant warmth from the contact spread up her arm. I'm Rachel Morgan. It's a genuine pleasure to meet you, Rachel Morgan. The way he spoke her name felt sincere, as if he was committing it to memory. This is a long shot, but would you consider guiding a totally clueless bachelor through the rest of this shopping trip? I swear I'm not some weirdo or a psycho, just completely lost when it comes to anything food-related. Alarm bells started blaring in the practical part of Rachel's mind. A man she didn't know, dressed in pricey clothes with a vacant shopping cart and an anxious grin. It was a checklist of all the red flags her mom had cautioned her about back in a time when she still thought most people were decent. Then again, her mother had also told her to always listen to her intuition. And right now, her intuition was telling her that this Michael Carter was just a lonely soul who was as threatening as a lost puppy. And really, what was the harm in helping a guy pick out some groceries? Sure. The word escaped her lips before she could overthink it. I've got a little time to spare. Oh, thank you. You could practically feel the wave of relief that washed over him. All right, a small bird is on the list. What's next? Rachel checked the time on her inexpensive digital watch, a Christmas gift from Jaden that was already running slow. She figured she had about 20 minutes until her bus was due. Let's head over to the produce section first. Potatoes are a must, yams and regular ones if you want variety. They started walking side by side down the aisle. The soft scuff of Rachel's old sneakers was a stark contrast to the solid click of his leather boots on the linoleum floor. As she identified different vegetables and suggested ways to prepare them, he placed each item into his cart as carefully as if they were priceless artifacts, not just potatoes and some string beans. You know, it's just hitting me that I don't think I've ever done my own food shopping, Michael admitted while they were looking over the butternut squashes. Hearing myself say that, it sounds pretty crazy, right? A tiny bit, Rachel conceded, but we all have things we've never done. For instance, I've never, been skiing or checked into a luxury hotel or dine somewhere so fancy the menus don't even show the prices. Trust me, you're not missing a thing with the skiing. I fractured my arm 2 separate times just trying to learn. He lifted a squash feeling how heavy it was. How's this one? That's perfect. And next you'll want, just then Rachel's phone vibrated inside her pocket. She retrieved it and saw Jaden's name flash on the screen, causing that familiar lurch in her chest that was both worry and relief. Excuse me, I have to get this. It's my son. Oh, of course, please do. Michael took a respectful step, suddenly finding the display of squash utterly fascinating. Hi, sweetie, Rachel said into the phone. Is everything all right? Mom, my homework's all done and I'm starving. Is it okay if I eat the last Pop-Tart? Sure, honey, go for it. I'll be back in a little while to make us a proper meal. Are we going to have turkey tomorrow? The sheer hope in Jaden's voice was a pang in her heart. Rachel glanced down at the chicken package still in her grip and likely fully thawed by now. We're going to have a special meal, I promise you. Okay, love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetie. 20 minutes, right. She ended the call and looked up to see Michael observing her, a gentle look on his face. That was your son, he stated gently. How old is he? He's 8, will be 9 soon. Rachel put her phone back in her pocket. Listen, I really need to be heading out. I've got a bus to catch to get home. Yes, of course. I can't thank you enough for all your guidance. Michael motioned toward his cart, which was now piled high. Honestly, I would have been completely helpless without you. Rachel just nodded, suddenly struck by the stark contrast between the two of them as they stood there in the aisle. There he was with a cart piled high and clothes that cost a fortune. And there she was with a thawing chicken, a torn bag, and a bus to catch. All of a sudden, the grocery store lights seemed harsh and unforgiving. Could I ask you a question? Michael said just before she turned to go. And feel free to tell me if this is totally out of line, he added. Rachel braced herself. This was it. That strange favor men always asked for after being kind for a moment. What are your plans for Thanksgiving, he asked, for you and your son? That was not what she was expecting. We're just staying in. It'll be a quiet day, just us. Got it. Michael shifted his feet, looking awkward for the first time since they'd met. So this might come off as strange. And I swear I'm not a creep or anything, but I have all this food now and zero clue what I'm doing. And you obviously know how to put together a real Thanksgiving meal. A knot formed in Rachel's stomach. She knew exactly where this was headed. She could see it approaching like an unstoppable train. What if you and your son joined me at my place for Thanksgiving? Michael blurted out. I'll cover all the food. You can make whatever you want, and we can all have dinner together. Your son would be more than welcome, and frankly, you'd be saving me. I'd rather not dine alone, and I definitely don't want to poison myself attempting to cook a turkey. It was a sweet proposition, a genuinely kind one. And a part of Rachel desperately wanted to agree, not for the free meal or the momentary relief, but because Michael Carter had kind eyes, a nervous grin, and seemed to carry the same loneliness she did. But she had her principles. She had forged them from the ruins of her previous life, and they were what kept her and Jaden safe. Principle 1, never accept handouts. Principle 2, never let Jaden get attached to temporary people. Principle 3, never trust a man who seems too perfect. That is incredibly generous, Rachel said, choosing her words with care. But I really don't think... I'm sorry, Michael cut in. That was too forward. I didn't want to make you feel pressured. He reached into his pocket, retrieved a business card, and offered it to her. Here, this is my information. Think it over. No pressure whatsoever. If you decide you'd like to give me a call. If you'd rather not, I completely understand. Rachel's hand moved on its own, taking the card. The stock was heavy. The lettering embossed Carter Industries, Michael Carter, CEO. A phone number and an email were listed below. Carter Industries. She'd noticed that name on buildings downtown. You're that Michael Carter, she stated softly, the tech guy from Charleston. That's me. He had the good sense to look a bit embarrassed. Does that make this whole thing more weird or less weird? I honestly have no idea. Rachel gazed at the card. Carter Industries had been in the headlines last month for some monumental deal, something to do with AI and medical breakthroughs. This man was likely a millionaire, possibly even a billionaire. And he was asking her, Rachel Morgan, a broke single mother who couldn't swing a turkey to cook his Thanksgiving dinner. Just think about it, Michael repeated. And Rachel, I appreciate your help today. Truly, you didn't have to do that. But you did. That means something. Rachel managed a nod, words failing her. She clutched her chicken and his card and made her way to the checkout, her head spinning. She heard the squeak of Michael's cart behind her, also headed for the registers. At the counter, Rachel paid with her debit card, wincing as she mentally tallied up her remaining balance. She'd manage. She always managed. Ma'am, the cashier, a tired-looking woman who looked to be about her age, held out a receipt. The gentleman behind you took care of your items. He asked me to tell you, Happy Thanksgiving. Rachel whirled around. Michael had already vanished, disappearing into the parking lot with his cart of groceries she'd helped him choose. She glanced at her receipt, paid in full, $7.99, but it felt like it was worth so much more. Rachel's hands trembled as she bagged her chicken. Her gaze fell again to Michael Carter's business card, to the number printed in neat black type. Outside, the Charleston air was mild for a late November evening. That perfect 70-degree weather that made Southern life almost tolerable. Rachel headed for the bus stop, chicken in her bag, card in her pocket, and Michael Carter's smile stuck in her mind like a song on repeat. Her phone buzzed once more. It was probably Jaden checking if she had made it to the library like she'd sworn she would last week. She had forgotten. Again. Rachel pulled the business card out one last time, studying it, thinking of Jaden's eager voice asking about a turkey, and thinking of a lonely Michael Carter with his full cart and gentle eyes. She thought of all the rules she had constructed to keep them from harm. Then she considered how bone-tired she was of just getting by. How long had it been since she let herself hope for more than just making it to the following week? She remembered how often she'd told Jaden that it wasn't a weakness to ask for help. She took out her phone, stared at the card, put it away, and then took it out again. What was the worst that could really happen? Miles away, Michael Carter sat in his penthouse overlooking the Charleston harbor, wondering if he had just completely ruined his shot at seeing Rachel Morgan again. It was Tuesday night, just 2 days before Thanksgiving, and his phone had been utterly silent. Not that he was expecting a call. He had, after all, practically cornered a total stranger in a supermarket and invited her to his place. Brilliant move. Just brilliant. He mentally kicked himself, pouring a glass of wine he had no desire to drink. His penthouse was gorgeous in that cold, professionally staged manner that looked amazing in magazines but felt impossible to actually live in. A sterile landscape of white, gray, and chrome where every single thing was placed just so. And it was all so empty. He'd purchased the apartment 3 years ago, right after Carter Industries went public. Overnight, he was flush with more cash than he could ever imagine spending. His designer had labeled the style minimalist elegance. Michael just thought of it as lonely. The turkey he'd purchased sat in his refrigerator, chilling alongside all the other groceries Rachel had guided him to. He had watched countless YouTube tutorials on thawing techniques and read a dozen articles about the art of brining. He remained completely convinced he was going to somehow burn the building down in the attempt. His phone lay on the kitchen island, its silence a heavy accusation. Michael snatched it up, scanned for missed calls he knew were not there, put it down, snatched it up again, and checked his email. Nothing. He set it down. "You are pathetic," he muttered to himself. The simple truth was that Rachel Morgan had occupied his thoughts ever since she'd walked away from him in that grocery aisle. Something about her had completely unsettled him. It might have been the effortless authority with which she spoke about cooking, as though feeding people was the most instinctual act in the world. It could have been the smile that lit up her face while she was on the phone with her son, so radiant with love, it made Michael's own chest constrict. Or maybe it was that she had looked at him, truly looked at him, and had not seen the money, the corporation, or the last name. She had simply seen a man utterly lost in front of the frozen turkeys. When had that last occurred? Michael couldn't remember. Every person in his orbit wanted something. Business partners were after deals. Women were after his fortune, his connections, or the social currency that came with dating Michael Carter, CEO. Even his family treated him like a walking ATM with a good pedigree. Rachel Morgan had seen a train wreck in the frozen food aisle and offered to help. Just then, Michael's phone vibrated, and he grabbed it so quickly he almost knocked it into his wine. The screen displayed an unknown number. His heart did a foolish flip inside his chest. "Hello," he tried for a casual tone and failed spectacularly. "Hi, this is Rachel Morgan from the market." Michael sank heavily onto his pristine white sofa. "Rachel, hi. I wasn't certain I'd hear from you." "Yeah, I almost didn't call." She sounded tentative, which to his surprise made him feel less on edge. "Look, about your Thanksgiving invitation. Were you actually serious about that, or were you just trying to be nice?" "I meant it." Michael's response was too fast, too eager, and he tried to dial it back. "I mean, yes, I absolutely meant it. I would love for you and your son to come for Thanksgiving. Silence hung on the line. Michael held his breath. Okay, Rachel said at last. But I need to set some ground rules first. Absolutely. Anything. I'm not looking for a handout. If I'm using your kitchen, it's as a job. You have an enormous meal to make and no idea where to begin. I have experience catering for large groups and I could use, she trailed off for a second. I could use the work. So this is a business arrangement. You cover the food in the kitchen. I'll cover the labor and the know-how. Deal. Michael had to fight the urge to argue to say that she shouldn't have to work for a Thanksgiving invitation. He'd asked her because he wanted the company not to hire a chef. But the resolve in her voice warned him that arguing would kill this call instantly. Deal, he repeated. Although I hope you'll let me help. I am trying to learn. You can be my sous chef. He could hear a smile in her voice now. But be warned, I'm a drill sergeant in the kitchen. I think I can handle a drill sergeant. We'll see about that. It was a definite smile this time. So when do you want us to be there and where exactly is there? Your business card just gives a downtown Charleston location. Michael gave her the full address and heard her sharp intake of breath when he said the building's name. Yeah, it was the notorious one. The one with the doorman, the private keycard elevator, and condos that started at $3 million. You live at the Harbor Collection? Rachel's voice had turned cautious. Unfortunately, it's not as impressive as it's made out to be. Mostly it's just overpriced and inconvenient. That was actually the God's honest truth. Michael loathed the pretension of the place, the way other residents stared right through the cleaning staff, the way the doorman insisted on calling him Mr. Carter, even after Michael had asked him 100 times to please just use his first name. Right? Rachel said, not sounding the least bit convinced. Well, should we plan on Wednesday evening to start the prep work? Some of the dishes have to be made a day ahead. Perfect. Whatever time works for you is fine. I'll order us a pizza or something for dinner. Pizza sounds great. My son will be ecstatic. She paused. Michael, what's the real reason you're doing this? It was a fair question. Michael's eyes drifted around his empty penthouse, settling on his untouched glass of wine, on the life he'd built that looked so perfect on the surface, but felt completely hollow inside. He let out a sigh. Honestly, every Thanksgiving I've ever had was spent with people who secretly disliked one another, eating meals no one actually liked, all while pretending it was wonderful. For once in my life, I just wanted an authentic Thanksgiving with people who genuinely wanted to be together, even if it meant bribing them with pizza and access to a kitchen. Rachel let out a laugh, and the sound of it eased a tightness in Michael's chest. I can't tell if that's incredibly sad or refreshingly honest, she remarked. Is it possible for it to be both? Yes, I believe it is, she sighed. All right, we'll be there on Wednesday around 5. And Michael, thank you for the chicken. Truly, you shouldn't have done that. It was only a chicken. It was more than just that. Yeah. Her voice softened. It's been a very long time since somebody did something kind for me without wanting something in return. So I appreciate it. She ended the call before Michael had a chance to reply. He sat there on the sofa phone in his hand, realizing he had a goofy grin on his face. Wednesday. He was going to see her on Wednesday. That gave him time to tidy up, to confirm his kitchen was actually functional, and maybe even learn how not to be a completely terrible host. Michael flipped open his laptop and went to YouTube. How to be a good sous chef, he searched. 47,000 results. Excellent. Wednesday came in cold and wet, the type of day that made Charleston feel less like a tropical getaway and more like the Deep South. Michael had spent the entire day in meetings, completely zoned out and useless, glancing at his watch every 10 minutes. At 4:30, he rushed out of his downtown office and headed home, violating at least 5 traffic rules in his haste. At 4:50, he was restlessly pacing his apartment, suddenly noticing how cold and sterile it all was. He had no family pictures on the walls because there were no good ones to hang. There wasn't a single personal item because his decorator claimed they would disrupt the aesthetic. The place lacked any sense of warmth because creating it was something Michael never knew how to do. A bit late for that now, he mumbled, catching his reflection in the hallway mirror. He traded his suit for jeans and a sweater, aiming for a look that was casual and friendly, but probably just came off as nervous. The doorman rang him at 5:03. Mister Carter, you have visitors, a Miss Morgan and a young boy. Send them on up. Thank you, David. Michael stood waiting by his door, feeling a level of anxiety he'd never experienced before any corporate presentation. This was a huge mistake. What was he even thinking? Rachel would get one glimpse of this apartment and immediately grasp how far apart their worlds were and how any sort of friendship between them was simply out of the question. Then the elevator chimed. Rachel was the first to step out, dressed in jeans and a cozy blue sweater that made her dark skin radiate. Her hair fell in loose curls around her face, and she had a large tote bag slung over one shoulder. Following her was a small boy, Jaden, who was looking everywhere with wide eyes and his mouth slightly open. "Whoa," Jaden gasped. "Mom, this place is like a spaceship." "Jaden, be polite," Rachel said. But she was also gazing around, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows and the view of Charleston Harbor, which was laid out below like a perfect postcard. "Hi," Michael said, suddenly feeling awkward with his hands. "Come on in. Make yourselves at home." Rachel looked him in the eye, and a silent message seemed to pass between them. Maybe an acknowledgement of how strange the whole thing was, or perhaps just a shared sense of jitters. Then a smile spread across her face, and Michael was reminded why he'd been so eagerly counting down to 5 o'clock. "This is Jaden," Rachel said, placing a hand on her son's shoulder. "Jaden, this is Mr. Carter. Michael, please." He knelt to be on the same level as the boy. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Jaden. Your mom told me you're 8. "Almost 9, Jaden stated matter-of-factly. "In January." "Capricorn, that's a great sign." Michael had absolutely no clue if that was true. "Do you like pizza?" Jaden's eyes lit up immediately. "Yes. Do you have any with pepperoni? I got 3 different kinds." "We have pepperoni, just cheese, and one with some vegetables on it that your mom will probably insist you eat." Jaden chuckled and Rachel shook her head, but she was smiling too. "Come on," Michael said, getting up and leading them into his home. "Let me show you around. I should warn you, my kitchen is probably far too stylish for any real cooking. My interior designer valued aesthetics over practicality." "I'm sure I can manage," Rachel replied, following him through the living room, her eyes absorbing every detail. Michael tried to imagine the apartment from her point of view, seeing the art his designer had selected for the walls, because he knew nothing about it. He saw the furniture that looked stunning but was uncomfortable to sit in. He noticed the books on the shelves, not a single one of which he had ever actually read. The kitchen, at least, was highly functional, boasting top-tier appliances, double ovens, and an enormous island with enough counter space for a commercial kitchen. Rachel put her bag down on the marble countertop and scanned the room with what looked like a nod of approval. "Okay," she said, "I can definitely work with this." Jaden had wandered over to the windows, pressing his face right up against the glass. "Mom, you can see for miles. Hey, there's the bridge." "I see it, honey." Rachel turned back to Michael. "He's never been this high up." "The view is just about the only real perk of this apartment," Michael admitted. "That and the fantastic water pressure." Rachel arched an eyebrow. "Priorities." "Hey, when you're 6'2", good water pressure is non-negotiable." She let out a laugh, and an absurd wave of pride washed over Michael for being the one to cause it. While they ate pizza, Michael got the rundown on Jaden. The kid was obsessed with dinosaurs, video games, and his school librarian, a Mrs. Patterson, who bent the rules and let him check out books way beyond his grade level. He also learned that Rachel's life revolved around a vintage bookshop on Meeting Street, that Charleston had been her home for nearly 9 years, and that she not only knew every plant in the Battery Gardens by name, but also the backstory of nearly every building in the downtown area. "You're really in love with this place, aren't you?" Michael remarked, watching her features glow as she discussed the city's architecture. "It was my lifeline," Rachel replied matter-of-factly. Realizing what she'd just revealed, she shot a quick look at Jaden, who was fully engrossed in building a fortress out of pizza crusts. "After Jaden was born, we had nowhere else to turn. Charleston welcomed us, gave us a real shot at things." Michael was dying to ask for more details, but the look on her face suggested it was a painful story. Changing the subject, he asked, "So what's your absolute favorite spot in the city?" "The Battery at sunset," Rachel answered instantly. "When the light catches the water perfectly and bathes everything in gold, it makes you believe in magic just for a second." "I've never actually been." Rachel just stared at him. "You live in Charleston and you've never gone to the Battery." "I've been past it." Michael defended himself. "I've just never actually stopped." "That is a travesty. We are fixing that after Thanksgiving." The casual certainty in her voice, as if seeing each other after Thursday was a foregone conclusion. As if this was the start of something, not just a one-time favor, made Michael's heart do that same silly flutter all over again. With the pizza gone, it was time to get to business. Rachel started pulling items from her bag, various spices, a well-worn cookbook, and a set of measuring cups that looked like they'd witnessed 1,000 recipes. She instructed Michael on which ingredients to grab as she laid out the plan for the next day. "We're tackling the turkey first thing in the morning," she declared, pulling her hair back with a band she had on her wrist. "But tonight we can get the cranberry sauce and the stuffing bread out of the way and prep all the vegetables. It'll make tomorrow far less chaotic." "You're in charge," Michael said, moving to the sink to wash his hands. "Don't you forget it," Rachel replied with a grin. "All right, sous chef, let's see what you're made of." For the following 3 hours, Michael's immaculate kitchen was completely transformed. Rachel demonstrated how to chop an onion without shedding a tear. "You freeze it first." Who knew? She showed him how to whip up cranberry sauce from scratch, and she was right, it was incredibly easy, and how to properly cube bread for the stuffing. Apparently, it needed to be left out overnight to get stale. Jaden posted up at the island to do his homework, periodically snatching a piece of celery or asking if he could lend a hand. Rachel made him responsible for measuring the dry ingredients, and Michael couldn't help but notice the patient, loving way she guided her son's hands. "Your mom is a seriously good cook," Michael mentioned to Jaden during a lull while Rachel was checking on something in the oven. "She makes the absolute best grilled cheese," Jaden announced with total conviction. "And her chocolate chip cookies are way, way better than anything from a store." "I bet they are. Are you my mom's boyfriend?" Jaden blurted out the question with the unfiltered honesty common to 8-year-olds everywhere. Michael nearly choked on his water. "What? No, we're just friends." Oh, Jaden's disappointment was visible. "My friend Tyler's mom has a boyfriend. He takes them to the movies and stuff." "That sounds nice." "Jaden," Rachel had reappeared from the oven. "What did I tell you about asking questions that are too personal?" "Sorry." Jaden didn't sound very sorry. "But he seems nice. Nicer than Mom's last boyfriend." "I didn't have—" Rachel stopped short, her face flushing a deep red. "You know what, new subject? Jaden, why don't you tell Michael about that dinosaur project of yours?" Jaden immediately launched into a detailed lecture on the differences between herbivores and carnivores, while Rachel viciously chopped carrots and steadfastly avoided looking in Michael's direction. By 9 o'clock, the kitchen smelled like a full-blown Thanksgiving feast. The cranberry sauce was cooling on the countertop, and Jaden was fast asleep on Michael's couch, curled up like a puppy. "I should probably get him home," Rachel said softly, gazing down at her son. "We've definitely overstayed our welcome." "You really haven't." Michael came to stand by the couch with Aaron. "He can sleep here. It's totally fine, Savannah. He's like a sack of bricks when he's out like this. I can carry him, but the bus will be a challenge." The bus, right? It had slipped Michael's mind that she didn't own a car. "Let me give you a ride," he insisted. "You don't need to do that." "I know I don't need to. I want to. Please." Rachel sized him up for a long moment, and Michael could practically see her weighing her options and deciding if he was trustworthy. Finally, she gave a slow nod. "Okay, thank you." Michael carried Jaden down to his car, a sensible Toyota SUV that was easily the most modest thing he owned. As Rachel gathered the last of their things, the boy barely moved, just mumbled something about velociraptors, before settling his head against Michael's shoulder. Rachel gave him an address on the east side in one of the older areas near the college. The kind of neighborhood where big houses had been carved up into apartments, and the rent was low because the buildings were ancient and the plumbing was iffy at best. They barely spoke on the way there. Michael kept his eyes on the road as Rachel stared out the window, her fingers tapping a restless rhythm on her knee model. As he parked before a skinny house, its paint flaking and mailbox tilting, she admitted, "It's nothing fancy. But it's our home." "It looks wonderful," Michael replied, switching off the car. A laugh escaped Rachel, though it held no humor. "No, it really doesn't, but I appreciate you saying that." Then she turned to rouse Jaden. "Time to get up, sweetheart. We're here." Michael grabbed some of their maize and followed her up an outdoor stairway, each step groaning in protest. They reached a small landing with a couple of doors and a planter holding what was either a dead plant or one waiting for spring. It was impossible for Michael to know for sure. With her key out, Rachel turned to him. "Thank you," she said, "for everything you did tonight. So I'll see you tomorrow." Michael could hear the eagerness in his own words. He couldn't quite mask it. "Yes, tomorrow," she confirmed with a smile. 9 o'clock sharp. We need that bird in the oven by 10. If we have any hope of eating before sundown, don't worry, I'll be up. I'll even have the coffee on." "That's what I like to hear." As she unlocked the door, Michael got a peek into a cozy living area filled with eclectic furniture and covered in photographs. It was the complete opposite of his own minimalist apartment. This place felt inviting and full of life. Good night, Michael, Rachel murmured. Good night, Rachel. Driving back through the quiet streets of Charleston, Michael felt a sense of anticipation for the morning he hadn't experienced in a very long time. Family, if you're still with us, this story must have struck a chord. Drop a comment below to share your feelings and let me know where you're tuning in from. And don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe if you're new here. Go ahead and hit that notification bell too. Every bit of engagement really supports the channel. The morning of Thanksgiving dawned crisp and bright, a classic beautiful November day that Charleston was famous for. By 6:30, Michael was wide awake, too keyed up to get any more rest. He killed the next 2 hours tidying his immaculate apartment and verifying that his coffee machine was functional about 40 separate times. At 8:45, he started pacing. By 8, well, I wish 50 you could find him glued to the window, anxiously awaiting Rachel's arrival like a high schooler on prom night. Then at 8, by 58, he found himself second-guessing every decision he'd ever made. That brought him to this point feeling utterly ridiculous for being so on edge about a woman he'd met just days ago. His phone buzzed at 9:01. It was the front desk. Let them come up, Michael instructed, doing his best to keep his voice steady. When the elevator doors opened, Rachel appeared dressed in a red sweater and jeans, with her hair tied up in a high ponytail. Instantly, any suave welcome Michael had rehearsed vanished from his mind. Morning, she greeted with a smile. You ready to tackle this turkey? More like I'm ready to watch you work your magic while I pass you utensils and hope I don't get in the way. That's the attitude, she replied, then peeked over her shoulder. Jaden is still in slow motion mode. Mornings aren't his thing. Just then, Jaden shuffled out of the elevator, clad in pajama bottoms and a Jurassic Park tee, looking barely awake. Hey there, champ, Michael greeted him. Jaden mumbled an unintelligible reply, dragged his feet over to the sofa, and immediately flopped onto it. Just give him some cartoons and about an hour, Rachel advised. He'll rejoin the living by 10 o'clock. While Jaden took control of the television, Michael showed Rachel around the kitchen. Before long, the apartment was alive with the noise from a morning cooking program on the TV and the sound of Rachel humming happily as she began her work. All right, she announced, heaving a giant turkey out of the refrigerator. Let's get down to business. Over the following hour, Michael received a crash course in preparing poultry that was far more detailed than he ever thought possible. Rachel demonstrated how to take out the giblets. Disgusting. Next, she explained why patting the bird dry was crucial. Then came rubbing a mixture of butter and herbs beneath the skin, which felt oddly rewarding. You've got a knack for this, Rachel commented once he was done with the butter application. I'm just taking directions from a pro. Close enough. As she smiled at him over the turkey, it dawned on Michael that they were incredibly close, each with a hand buried inside the raw fowl. And yet it felt like one of the most profoundly personal experiences he'd ever had. So fighting to sound relaxed while his heart performed acrobatics, he said, Tell me a secret about yourself. Like what, for instance? Anything. Go on, surprise me. Rachel paused to think, her hands continuing to season the bird on autopilot. My dream used to be becoming a chef. I even did a semester at culinary school, but then I found out I was pregnant with Jaden. So I had to leave the program, of course. Do you ever consider finishing it? But tuition is steep, and the restaurant industry demands young chefs who can pull 80-hour weeks. My priority is Jaden. She gave a little shrug, but Michael could see the wistfulness in her eyes. Plus, my job at the bookstore is fine. It's peaceful and secure, and I can read when things are slow. But it's not your passion. No, it really isn't. Her gaze met his. What's your story? Was becoming a tech mogul always the plan? To begin with, I'm not actually a billionaire. She lifted an eyebrow and he conceded. All right, on paper, I suppose I am, but it's not as if I have a swimming pool full of cash like some cartoon character. The vast majority is invested back into the company. Oh, you poor thing, not having billions in ready cash. Michael chuckled. I'll give you that. And no, this was never the goal. I was just passionate about coding, creating new things, and cracking difficult puzzles. The wealth was basically a side effect. A side effect? I developed a piece of software for a personal project, and it just so happened that a lot of other people found it useful as well. And just like that, I was heading up a company with 300 staff members and had investors constantly on my case. He started to trust the turkey legs exactly how Rachel had shown him. Honestly, some days I long for the simplicity of just being in a coffee shop with my laptop. Back before the board meetings, the stockholder reports, and all the people who only pretended to like me for my money. People fake liking you, Rachel asked in a soft voice. Most of them do, he said, finishing the knot on the turkey legs. Present company excluded, of course. I hope I can barely stand you. But the smile on her face gave her away. By 10:15, the turkey was in the oven. The timer was on, and they started on the rest of the meal. A sweet potato, casserole, green beans, almondine, and from-scratch rolls that were set aside to rise. With Rachel giving directions and Michael carrying them out, they fell into a comfortable rhythm, somewhere between peeling potatoes and whipping cream. Jaden finally woke up for good, around 11 o'clock, wandered into the kitchen, and asked if he could lend a hand. You can be my official taste tester, Rachel offered, holding out a spoonful of the mashed sweet potatoes. That's the greatest job ever, Jaden proclaimed. Michael found himself watching them. Watching the bond between Rachel and her son, an indescribable emotion stirred deep within him. It was a mix of admiration and the quiet ache of a man who had always been a stranger to happiness. Or maybe a yearning for something he had never experienced. His own upbringing had been so cold. It had been a life of country club dinners and boarding schools, with parents who demonstrated love with expensive presents and disappointed glances. He'd figured out early on that love was conditional, that you had to earn approval, and that any show of emotion was a weakness. Seeing Rachel with Jaden, he was struck by how deeply mistaken his parents had been. Michael, Rachel's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Are you okay? Yeah, just thinking. He managed a smile. What's next on the list? Now we wait. The turkey has a couple more hours. Want to watch a bit of football? They all ended up on the couch together, watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade on TV, because Jaden really wanted to see the balloons. Michael took one end of the sofa, Rachel sat in the middle, and Jaden was curled up right against her side. And for some reason, it felt completely right, so natural, as if this was how Thanksgiving was meant to be. This is really nice, Jaden remarked, his eyes on a giant Snoopy float drifting across the television screen. Thanks for having us over, Michael. Thanks for being here, buddy. Do you have your own family? Jaden asked the question with the same blunt honesty of an 8-year-old that he'd had the night before. Jaden, Rachel gently warned. It's fine, Michael replied. Yes, I do. My parents are in Connecticut. I've got a sister who lives in California. Are you going to spend Thanksgiving with them? Not this time. Why not? Because sometimes families can be complicated, Rachel cut in softly. Not everyone has the kind of family they want to be with on holidays. Jaden frowned, trying to understand. That's sad. Yeah, Michael had to agree. It is a little. Well, you can spend it with us, Jaden declared. We're nice. Michael felt a lump form in his throat. You are very nice, the best. His eyes met Rachel's over Jaden's head, and an unspoken understanding seemed to pass between them. It might have been comprehension, or maybe it was a shared recognition of their own loneliness. For 34 years, Michael had built up walls, keeping people at a distance to protect himself from the letdown of being truly known and then judged as inadequate. But Rachel Morgan looked at him as if she saw straight through all that, as if she saw the real him, and her gaze didn't waver. The oven timer buzzed for the turkey at around 3. Rachel checked. It announced it was perfect and had Michael move the roasting pan to the counter so the bird could rest. In no time, the kitchen was a hub of organized chaos. Rachel was plating the dishes. Jaden was setting the formal dining table that Michael had never once put to use. Michael was doing his best to help out while staying out of the way. Okay, Rachel finally said, looking over the feast they'd prepared. I think we're ready. The table could have been in a magazine. There was a golden brown turkey bowls of fluffy mashed potatoes, green beans with toasted almonds, a sweet potato casserole topped with toasted marshmallows and freshly baked rolls, cranberry sauce, and gravy. And right in the middle, surrounded by all the food, sat a simple bouquet of autumn flowers that Michael had arranged for that morning when Rachel wasn't looking. You got flowers, Rachel observed quietly. It's Thanksgiving. It seemed like the right thing to do. Michael pulled out her chair. Please have a seat. They got settled at the table with Rachel at one end and Michael at the other and Jaden between them. For a second, no one spoke. Should we say grace? Jaden asked. We usually do on Thanksgiving. That we do, Rachel confirmed, glancing at Michael. If that's all right with you. Of course, Michael said as he reached for Jaden's hand on his left and Rachel's on his right. Her hand was small and warm in his, and he could feel the faint calluses from her job, the strength in her grip. I'll start, Rachel said, closing her eyes. Thank you for this meal, for this beautiful home, and for the kindness of new friends. Thank you for my son, who is the very best part of my life. And thank you for bringing us all together in the most unexpected of ways. And thank you for dinosaurs, Jaden chimed in. And the turkey in Michael's really cool apartment. Rachel smiled, her eyes still shut. Michael, is there anything you'd like to add? Michael was not a religious person. He had given up on the idea of a benevolent universe around the same time his father informed him that emotional men were weak. But as he sat there, his hand holding Rachel's and her son's, and looked at the incredible meal they'd all made, something that felt like belief settled over him. Thank you, he murmured, for Rachel Morgan, finding me in a grocery store when I was lost, and for this moment, and for a second, shot at things I never even knew were missing from my life. When Rachel opened her eyes to meet his, Michael saw a perfect reflection of his own feelings, staring back hope, anxiety, and the fragile start of something that terrified them both. And then they ate. My God, how they ate. Jaden proclaimed that every single dish was the best thing he had ever put in his mouth, which made Rachel laugh and call him biased. Michael took Jaden's side and she gave him a smile that made his heart stutter. No, I'm being serious, Michael said already into his second helping, because it was impossible to stop eating something so delicious. You could have your own restaurant. This is absolutely incredible. It's just turkey and potatoes. Nothing special. It's perfect. It's hands down the best Thanksgiving I have ever had. That isn't a high bar if you're used to country club meals. It's saying absolutely everything, Michael insisted, putting his fork down. Rachel, having you both here, it means more than I can say. I know this whole thing was supposed to be a business arrangement, but for me it's become more than that. Rachel lowered her own fork, her attention suddenly captivated by her napkin. Michael, I know this is probably coming out of left field, he continued, because the words just wouldn't stop. We barely know one another, and our lives are worlds apart, but I really like being with you, with both of you. You make this apartment feel less hollow. Your place isn't hollow, Jaden chimed in. It's giant. Big and hollow can feel the same, buddy. Rachel finally met his gaze. What are you trying to say, Michael? Good question. What was he trying to say? That he desperately wanted to see her again. That he couldn't stop thinking about her. That in just 3 days she had become the center of his universe. I'm saying I really hope this isn't our last Thanksgiving together, he said, choosing his words with care. And that maybe we could do other things too. Just normal things like coffee or dinner, or walking along the Battery at sunset. Like dating? Jaden inquired with the unfiltered curiosity of an 8-year-old. Jaden, Rachel looked horrified. What? That's what it sounds like. Tyler's mom is dating someone and, please finish your turkey. Michael probably should have been mortified. Instead, a feeling of hope swelled in his chest. What do you think? He asked Rachel. Would you be willing to go on a date with me? Full disclosure, I'm awful at this. I haven't been in a serious relationship for years. Years? Rachel's eyebrow shot up. 3, maybe 4, I'm not sure. They all sort of melt together when you're working 18-hour days and pretending not to see that everyone around you wants something. He drew a breath. But I see you, and I want to get to know you if that's something you'd be open to. No pressure at all if it's not. Rachel was silent for a long moment. Jaden's eyes darted between them like he was watching a tennis match. I have rules, Rachel said finally, about dating. Okay. I never introduce Jaden to a man unless I'm truly serious about him, which is why this entire situation is already a massive violation of that rule. But I'm guessing Thanksgiving counts as an extenuating circumstance. I understand. Also, my free time is practically non-existent. I have a full-time job and I'm a single parent. I can't just drop my life for spontaneous dates or weekend getaways. I wouldn't ask you to. And I'm not, she trailed off, picking her words with caution. I'm not financially in a position to afford expensive outings or fancy places. I can't. Stop, Michael said gently. I don't care about a single bit of that. I'm not asking you to match anything. I'm just asking if you'd like to spend time with me. That is all. Why? Rachel asked. And her question was steeped in vulnerability. I just don't see why someone like you would be interested in someone like me. Someone like me, Rachel, I'm a workaholic who has no real friends and a family that can barely stand the sight of me. I live in a condo that looks like a showroom because I have no idea how to make it feel like a home. I have spent 34 years of my life creating something that looks incredible on paper but feels completely empty in reality. He leaned in closer, willing her to understand. You walked into my life 3 days ago and changed everything. You taught me how to cook a turkey. You made me laugh for real. You showed me what family is supposed to feel like. You made my condo feel warm for the very first time. So yes, I want to date you. I want to take you for coffee and go for walks and hear you talk about your day. I want to be the reason you smile if you'll let me. Rachel's eyes were glistening. That's quite the declaration. I meant every single word. Mom is going to say yes, Jaden stage whispered. She's got her crying face on. I'm not crying, Rachel said, dabbing at her eyes. This is a lot to take in. Too much, Michael asked, a sudden wave of worry washing over him. No, not too much. She gave him a watery smile. Yes, okay. Yes, I will go on a date with you. Michael felt like he had just won the lottery. Yeah. Yeah. She let out a laugh. This is nuts. This whole thing is completely nuts. The good kind of nuts, though. That remains to be seen. Model scale. So when do I get to see you again? How about tomorrow or this weekend? A little eager, don't you think? Completely. Besides, you've already seen my place. It's not like I have a packed social calendar. Rachel smiled as she shook her head. But I have to work tomorrow. Working retail on Black Friday is just awful, and my schedule is packed for most of this weekend, too. What about Monday after Jaden's school dinner? Dinners can be a bit challenging with Jaden. Then have him tag along. I love spending time with both of you. You're really okay with that? Rachel's expression was filled with doubt. It's just that a lot of guys are hesitant to date a single mother because of the kid. Then a lot of guys are fools, Michael replied, glancing over at Jaden. No offense, champ, but I'm trying to make a good impression on your mom here. A grin spread across Jaden's face. You're not doing too bad. Once dinner was finished, they moved on to a pumpkin pie that Rachel had miraculously found the time to bake, while their conversation continued to flow with an easy, natural rhythm. Michael shared anecdotes about chaotic meetings at work, and Rachel countered with her own nightmare customer stories from the bookstore. Jaden lectured them on dinosaurs until he exhausted his supply of facts, then seamlessly transitioned to sharks. By 8 o'clock, Jaden was clearly running out of steam, curled up on the sofa with his eyelids heavy. We should probably get going, Rachel mentioned, as she began to collect the plates. Just leave them, Michael said. I'll handle the cleaning. Are you sure? Absolutely. You prepared this whole amazing meal. The very least I can do is wash the dishes. They then started packing up the remaining food. Even though Michael insisted he'd never be able to eat it all, Rachel was adamant about taking some food home, so he helped her bring everything down to his car. The journey back to Rachel's apartment was quiet, with Jaden fast asleep in the back. Rachel gazed out the window, her fingers tapping a nervous rhythm on her knee. Is everything all right? Michael inquired. Yeah, I'm just soaking it all in. She looked over at him. This was a really wonderful day. It's probably the nicest Thanksgiving I've had in a very long time. Same here. Without a doubt the best. Once they reached her apartment, Michael lifted Jaden and carried him upstairs as Rachel fumbled with the lock. The boy barely woke, just let out a mumble about turkey before resting his head against Michael's shoulder. Where should I take him? Michael whispered. Rachel gestured to a little bedroom just off the main room. Michael gently set Jaden down on the bed, and Rachel tucked him in, pressing a kiss to his forehead with a tenderness that made Michael's heart ache. Returning to the living room, they lingered awkwardly near the doorway. So, Rachel said, Monday it is. Monday. I'll swing by to get you at 6. Okay. A smile touched her lips. Thank you for all of this, Michael. For the shopping and the turkey and for letting us crash your place. It wasn't a crash. You brought this place to life. He reached for her hand, holding it softly. And thank you for giving a random guy in a grocery store a chance. That was the smartest move I've made in a while. They were standing much closer now. So close that Michael could smell the warm vanilla notes of her perfume. He desperately wanted to kiss her. He couldn't recall wanting anything more in his recent memory, yet he was determined to do this the right way. Good night, Rachel, he said instead, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. Good night, Michael. Michael drove back through the Charleston streets, which were all decked out for the holidays, passing homes filled with warm light and families enjoying each other's company, and he no longer felt alone. His phone vibrated just as he pulled into his parking spot. It was a message from Rachel. Jaden wants me to pass along that today was the greatest Thanksgiving ever. And I think I'd have to agree with him. Michael beamed at his screen like an absolute fool. He had a date for Monday. He possessed Rachel Morgan's phone number. For the first time in ages, he felt a glimmer of hope. It was without a doubt the greatest Thanksgiving ever. The weekend vanished in a whirlwind of text messages and growing excitement. Michael caught himself constantly glancing at his phone, breaking into a goofy grin every time a new message from Rachel appeared detailing her frantic Black Friday shift or Jaden's current dinosaur fixation. Friday night, I survived Black Friday. Just barely. 3 customers got into a fight over a first edition Hemingway. Holiday retail is practically a full contact sport. Saturday morning, Jaden wants to know if we can have Thanksgiving at your apartment every single year. He really likes your television. Saturday night, thanks again for Thursday and for all the leftovers. Jaden has been eating nothing but turkey sandwiches. I'm pretty sure he's slowly turning into a turkey Sunday afternoon. We're still good for tomorrow, right? Jaden has already chosen his attire. I should warn you, it includes a tie with dinosaurs on it. Michael shot back a reply to every text instantly, likely far too quickly, but he was powerless to stop himself. Monday felt like it was an eternity away rather than just hours. He used his Sunday to plan the most perfect first date. He avoided anything too extravagant. Rachel had made it clear she didn't like pricey gestures, but focused on somewhere pleasant that Jaden would also find fun. He decided on a relaxed Italian spot in the center of town that served excellent pizza and had an arcade machine in the back. Monday dawned cold and wet, which was typical for a Charleston winter. Michael managed to leave work ahead of schedule, went home for a quick change, and then found himself sitting in his apartment, glancing at his watch every 30 seconds. At 5:45, he was already on his way, and by 5:55, he was pulling up to the curb in front of Rachel's building. At exactly 6 o'clock, he was making his way up the wobbly staircase, feeling as jittery as a teenager on prom night. He knocked, waited, and heard shuffling from within. The door swung open to reveal Rachel in jeans and a green sweater that made her eyes sparkle like gold, and whatever smooth greeting he had practiced completely evaporated from his memory. "Hey!" He got out. "Hey there," she beamed back. "Please come on in. Jaden's just wrapping up his schoolwork." For the first time, Michael saw Rachel's apartment in the light of day as he walked inside. The place was compact, incredibly so, yet Rachel had turned it into a lovely space. The walls were a gallery of photos documenting Jaden's life through the years. Plants lined the windowsills, books were piled on any available surface, and a cozy blanket was draped over a well-loved sofa. The air smelled of vanilla and aging pages, a scent that was warm and full of life. This place felt like a true home, making his own penthouse seem like nothing more than a place to rest his head. At the kitchen table, Jaden lifted his head from what appeared to be a math assignment. "Hey, Michael, check it out. I've got my dinosaur tie on." "That's a sharp look," Michael commented, inspecting the neckwear. "No joke, you look ready to seal a massive corporate merger." "I have no idea what that is, but I appreciate it." Rachel picked up her bag and a canvas coat with a patch on one of its elbows. "All right, we're all set. So what's the destination?" "That's a secret, but I'm sure Jaden's going to love it." Their destination turned out to be Bella Rosa, a family-friendly Italian restaurant on East Bay Street that Michael had carefully selected for their evening. It offered delicious food, a relaxed vibe, and a lively enough environment to keep their chat private. The biggest draw, however, was a vintage arcade filled with pinball machines and timeless video games. The moment Jaden spotted the arcade, his eyes lit up. "Mom, can I go play?" Rachel answered with a firm, "Not until after we eat." They all slid into a booth with Jaden taking one side and Michael and Rachel sitting so closely on the other that their shoulders touched. Michael got some garlic bread for an appetizer, and once it arrived, Jaden devoured nearly half the basket before his mom could intervene. "Easy there, sweetheart," she chuckled. "You're going to get a stomachache." "I can't help it, it's delicious," Jaden argued, his mouth full of bread. Michael's gaze met Rachel's, and he couldn't help but smile. This exact moment, he realized, was the thing he'd been lacking his entire life, not the fancy dining with crisp linens and extensive wine collections. It was simply this enjoying food together, laughing freely, and feeling the comfort of being with people who genuinely wanted his company. Throughout the meal, their conversation flowed about all sorts of things. Rachel shared stories from the bookstore describing her most loved patrons and some of the strange things people asked for. Jaden gave Michael all the details about his science fair project, which was focused on the solar system. Michael recounted his childhood days of learning to program, telling them how he created his very first website at 12 and sold it for $50. $50, Rachel chuckled. "That's a pretty big drop from $1 billion. Listen, $50 felt like a fortune when I was 12. I went out and bought a pre-owned PlayStation and felt like a king." Once they finished eating, Michael handed Jaden a fistful of quarters and watched him dash over to the arcade, where he was instantly drawn to a basketball hoop game. "This was really unnecessary," Rachel commented, her eyes fixed on her son having fun. "I'm sure this is pricey." "It's not that bad, and I wanted to do it. Seeing him this happy is worth it. He's really taken a liking to you." Rachel's tone grew quiet. That's what makes this more difficult, you realize. Difficult in what way? Because if this whole thing falls apart, whatever it is we're doing, he's going to be crushed. And so will I. It took me so much effort to create a secure and steady life for him. Bringing someone new into the picture makes everything more complicated. Michael shifted to look at her directly. Rachel, I have no intention of causing pain to you or Jaden. That's not a promise you can make. You're not wrong. I can't guarantee what will happen down the road, but I can assure you that I'm taking this and you very seriously. I'm not interested in flings. I don't have the time for them. He extended his hand to take hers. I'm aware it's just been a couple of days and this might feel rushed, but what I feel when I'm with you is something I've never experienced before. It's as if for the first time in ages I can finally take a full breath. There was a shimmer in Rachel's eyes. I feel the same way, and that's exactly what terrifies me. Why is that? Because a guy in your position doesn't end up with someone in mine. Our lives are worlds apart, Michael. You've got penthouses, corporations, and wealth. I've got a single-bedroom apartment, a job in a shop, and maybe $100 to my name in savings. None of that matters to me. Well, it matters to me. Rachel withdrew her hand. It bothers me that I can't pull my own weight, that you'd always be the one picking up the tab because there's no way I could go halfsies. It bothers me that your life is champagne toast while mine is wine from a box. And it bothers me that sooner or later you're going to see how vast the difference is between us and just end it. Michael's tone was soft yet unwavering. You're making assumptions about what's important to me. Wealth is irrelevant, Rachel. It's just a figure in a bank statement. It can't purchase joy or a real connection or this feeling I get around you. That's a simple thing to claim when you're the one with all of it. That's a valid point, he conceded with a sigh. Look, I won't act like I know what it means to have financial difficulties. I have no idea. I was raised with money and I have money now. What I do know is the feeling of being completely alone, of putting up such high barriers that no one can get over them. To feel like you're just an observer watching from the sidelines as everyone else finds happiness and lives their lives. He looked directly into her eyes. With you for the very first time, I feel like I'm finally a part of it all. That feeling is more valuable than any amount of money I possess. Rachel dabbed at her eyes. You're making it incredibly difficult to think about this rationally. Excellent. Then be irrational with me. Take a leap of faith. A laugh escaped her, wobbly but genuine. I'm already taking a leap. I mean, I showed up tonight, didn't I? You really are. So what if we just quit overthinking all the ways this could fail and just see what happens? Before Rachel could even get a word out, Jaden darted back to their table out of breath and beaming. Mom, Michael, they've got the classic Miss Pac-Man here. Can I give it a try? Of course, sweetie. Here. As Rachel started searching her purse for change, Michael stopped her. I've got this. He passed Jaden a whole roll of quarters. Have a blast, kiddo. Jaden vanished in a flash. Rachel just shook her head, smiling. You're totally going to spoil him, just a little. Is that all right with you? I suppose time will tell. They stood by watching Jaden play for a bit before wandering over to the arcade section themselves. Jaden cheered them on from the sidelines as Michael showed Rachel the ropes on an old pinball machine. The sound of their laughter filled the air, competitive and close enough for Michael to catch the scent of her perfume, and in that moment, everything felt absolutely perfect. Then at 8:30, Rachel's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, a frown creasing her forehead. It's my boss. That's strange. She answered the call. Hey, Tom, what's going on? Michael saw the expression on her face shift, the warmth draining right out of her cheeks. What? No, that can't be right. I wasn't on the schedule for tonight. I double-checked it this morning. A pause. Tom, please. I can't afford to. Another silence, but I have a perfect attendance record. This just isn't fair. A final defeated pause. Fine. Yes, I understand. Goodbye. She ended the call just staring at her phone as if it had personally betrayed her. Rachel, what was that all about? I've been fired. Her voice was completely devoid of emotion. My boss is claiming I was a no-show for a shift tonight. He said he tried my apartment 3 times and I never picked up. And that this makes the 3rd time I've been unreliable. But you didn't have a shift. I know I didn't. I looked at the schedule first thing this morning. I even snapped a picture of it. I always do. She fumbled with her phone, pulling up the image. Look, see, Monday I'm off. It says so right there. Michael leaned in to look at the photo on her screen. It was plain as day Rachel was not scheduled to work on Monday evening. He must have switched it, Michael reasoned, and never even told me. And now I've lost my job for not showing up to a shift I had no idea even existed. Rachel's hands began to tremble. That job meant everything to me. It's how I paid my rent. It was our health insurance. She trailed off, shutting her eyes tightly. I have to go home. Rachel, wait, please. I just need to go home. I have to think. She called out for Jaden, who immediately ran back to them, his hands still full of quarters. Mom, is everything okay? It's nothing, sweetie. We just have to leave now. The car ride back to Rachel's place was completely silent. Jaden could tell something was off, so he didn't say a word. Rachel just gazed out the window, her jaw clenched as they pulled up to her building. She hopped out of the car, quickly unbuckling Jaden from the back. Rachel, hold on, Michael said. Let me do something. I can help. You can't fix this, Michael. She refused to meet his eyes. This is something I have to sort out myself, but I want to be there for you. I don't need you to help me. The words came out with more of an edge than she likely meant. Her expression softened a bit. I'm sorry, it's just, I can't deal with this right now. I just need some space. Michael could only watch as she led Jaden up the stairs, his small hand in hers, and he felt a sharp pang in his chest like something cracking. This was it. This was the moment it all came crashing down, when the real world shattered their perfect fantasy, where his wealth and her pride erected a barrier that seemed impossible for either of them to overcome. He remained in his car for what felt like an eternity, his gaze fixed on the dark windows of her apartment, asking himself if he had just lost something precious before it was ever truly his to begin with. The following 3 days were absolute agony. On Tuesday morning, Michael sent Rachel a text. How are you holding up? Is there anything I can do? Silence. Tuesday afternoon, he tried again. Jaden's dinosaur book is still in my car. Do you want me to bring it by? Still nothing. By Wednesday, he was pleading. Please just talk to me. I'm really worried about you. At last, on Wednesday evening, a reply came through. I'm okay, just sorting some things out. I'll reach out when I get a chance. But the call never came. Michael buried himself in his work, attending meetings he would usually pass off to others, and staying at the office past midnight. He would do anything to avoid picturing the look on Rachel's face when she took that call, or to forget the way she had pushed him away so thoroughly. Then on Friday afternoon, there was a knock on his office door. It was his assistant. Mr. Carter, a woman is here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment scheduled, but she insists it's urgent. Michael's heart leaped into his throat. Rachel, show her in. However, the woman who stepped into his office was not Rachel. She was a tall, blonde woman, likely in her mid-50s, dressed in a pricey suit and wearing a look of thinly veiled contempt. Michael Carter, she stated, yes. And who might you be? My name is Victoria Ashford. I am on the board of the Charleston Preservation Society. She took a seat without waiting for an invitation. We must have a conversation about your involvement with Rachel Morgan. Every single muscle in Michael's body went rigid. I beg your pardon. You've been spending time with her. I have. The single mother who was employed at that small bookshop on Meeting Street. How are you aware of that? Victoria offered a smile, but there was no warmth in it. Charleston is a very small world for people in our social sphere, Michael. News gets around, particularly when a man of your stature and fortune begins associating with unsuitable women. Get out, Michael said, rising to his feet. Leave my office this instant. Sit down. I have not concluded my business here. There was something in her tone that gave Michael pause. It was a veiled threat, but a threat nonetheless. What is it you want? He demanded. I want you to fully grasp the situation you found yourself in. Carter Industries is in the final stages of negotiating an extremely profitable contract with the city. $50 million for placing your AI medical software into the local hospitals. Precisely. A chill ran down Michael's spine. That contract had been in the works for 6 months. It was going to save lives and revolutionize how underserved communities accessed healthcare. It was the single most important deal of his career. What about it? The city council votes on it next month, and I happen to be close friends with several council members. Victoria settled back into her chair, a picture of composure. It would be a terrible shame if doubts were cast upon your sound judgment, your choice in companions perhaps. One might wonder if a man who makes such poor personal decisions can truly be trusted with a matter as vital as public health care. Are you threatening me? I am simply providing you with information. How you decide to use it is entirely your own affair. She rose and smoothed down her skirt. End your association with Rachel Morgan. Stop seeing her. Cease all contact. Move on to someone more suitable. If you do that, the council vote will go forward without a hitch. But if you continue on this path, I will personally ensure every council member hears about your little pet project. My girlfriend, Rachel, is not a charity case, he snapped. Isn't she Michael? You met her when she couldn't even pay for her own groceries? She's a single mother with no real prospects, struggling to get by with a child born outside of marriage. Is that honestly the image you want tied to your company's name? To your name? Michael felt a primal urge to physically escort the woman out of his office. He wanted to call security and have her permanently barred from the premises. But the contract, that deal would change so many lives for the better. Hospitals were depending on it. Patients were waiting. Why do you even care who I'm dating? He asked instead. I don't, but I am deeply invested in upholding certain standards within this community. And I most certainly care about the $50 million donation your company pledged to the Preservation Society as a condition of that hospital agreement. Victoria paused at the door. Think it over, Michael. Is one woman truly worth all this? After she was gone, Michael stood alone in his office, feeling the walls press in on him. That night, sitting in his penthouse, Victoria Ashford's words played on a loop in his mind. He had phoned his attorneys, and they'd only confirmed what he'd already suspected. What she was doing wasn't illegal. It was just the strategic use of influence, the old Charleston power brokers playing the game they knew best. He could put up a fight, take the story to the press, expose the whole rotten system, but that would absolutely demolish the hospital. Deal hurting the very people who needed the software and the patients who were desperate for better care. Michael's phone vibrated. A text from Rachel at last. Can we talk tomorrow? His heart seized. Tomorrow. He could lay it all out for her, explain Victoria Ashford, the blackmail, the impossible situation he was trapped in. She would understand. They could face it as a team. The alternative was to protect her by ending things abruptly, letting her believe he'd simply lost interest or had a change of heart. It would crush her, but she would eventually heal and move on, while the hospital contract would be saved and countless people would receive the help they needed. Michael surveyed his empty apartment, a life he had meticulously constructed that seemed so impressive from the outside, yet felt so utterly vacant. He had always been alone. What was a little while longer? His phone buzzed once more. It was Rachel again. I miss you. Is that crazy? Michael squeezed his eyes shut. He knew the right thing to do. He just wasn't sure he had the strength to survive it. Michael arranged to meet Rachel on Saturday at Waterfront Park, a neutral space where they could speak freely without Jaden overhearing. He found her on a bench facing the harbor, dressed in her canvas jacket with the frayed, patched elbow. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she looked so achingly beautiful it made his chest tighten. Hey, she said as he sat next to her. Hey. For a long moment, they said nothing, just watching the boats glide by. It was one of those flawless December days in Charleston, crisp and bright, the kind of day that drew tourists to the city in droves. I'm sorry, Rachel said at last, breaking the silence. For pushing you away this week, that wasn't fair. You had a lot on your plate. I did. I still do. She shifted to look at him directly. I've been on the job hunt all week. I sent out applications to 20 different places. I haven't gotten any calls back yet, but I'm confident something will turn up. Rachel, just let me help you. I can't take your money, Michael, she said, her tone gentle but resolute. I know your heart's in the right place, but this is something I have to do on my own. For my sake and for Jaden's. It's not about the money. It's always about the money when you're the one who doesn't have it. A sad smile touched Rachel's lips. You can't really grasp that because it's never been a worry for you. And I'm not saying that to make you feel guilty. It's just our reality. We're from completely different worlds. And there it was, the perfect excuse Michael needed. He could do it right now. He could tell her it wasn't working, end it cleanly, and shield her from the fallout of Victoria Ashford's scheming. But as he looked at her face, at the blend of hope and raw vulnerability in her eyes, the words wouldn't come. I don't give a damn about different worlds, he said instead. I care about you. I care about you too, and that's the problem. Why is that a problem? Rachel got up and walked to the railing that overlooked the water. Because caring about you complicates everything. It's because Jaden is already growing fond of you, asking when he gets to see you again. And it's because I'm actually starting to picture a life with you in it. And that scares the hell out of me. Why would that scare you? Because she said, spinning to face him. Because men from your world don't end up with women from mine, Michael. Because sooner or later you're going to see that I just don't belong. You'll be mortified by me at some high-end function because my clothes are all wrong and I won't know which fork is for the salad. Your friends and your family will look right through me. I'll forever be the project, the woman you rescued the charity case who couldn't even buy her own son a Thanksgiving dinner. That might not be how you see me, but it's exactly how everyone else will. And after a while, you'll start to see it that way too. You'll get sick of making excuses for me, exhausted from defending me, and tired of the whispers every time you turn your back. And what happens then? You walk away. And I'm left exactly where I was before we met. Only this time Jaden's heart will be broken, and I'll have thrown away so much time on a fantasy that was never going to happen. Michael closed the distance between them, taking her hands into his. This is real. Whatever this is between us, it's real. Is it? Or were you just feeling lonely and I happened to be available? The thankful single mother who could finally make your big apartment feel a little less empty. That's not fair. Maybe it isn't. But it's the kind of thing that runs through my mind at 3 a.m. When I'm wide awake, panicking about the rent, the power bill, about Christmas gifts, and about how I'm supposed to tell Jaden that Santa's a little short on cash this year. Michael took out his phone, opened his banking app, and began to offer it to her. Let me help. Number Rachel pulled back. No, Michael, I can't do that. Can't you see? If I accept your money, if I let you handle all of my issues, then what does that make me? Who am I anymore? I have spent 8 years building a life for myself and Jaden. It might not look like much, but we built it. I made it happen with nothing but my own 2 hands. The moment I let you ride in and solve everything, I give all of that up. I give up who I am. I'm not attempting to solve you. Yes, you are. It's the go-to move for wealthy people. They spot a problem, throw cash at it, and then wait for a thank you. But some issues can't be fixed with a bank account, Michael. Some things take your own time and your own effort, and you have to do the grueling work on your own. Tears were streaming down her face now, and it was shattering Michael's heart. I am so sorry, he said. You're right, I just don't get it. I am trying to, but I don't. I know. And I'm not holding that against you. Rachel dabbed at her eyes, but I just don't see how this is ever going to work. I don't see how we can possibly close this gap between our lives. We can if we decide we want to, but do you really want to? Rachel stared at him, her gaze intense. Because what happens in a few months after the initial excitement fades and you get an invitation to some fancy gala and have to figure out how to tell people your girlfriend buys her clothes at secondhand shops and relies on public transit. Will you still want this then? Will you still want me? Michael was desperate to say yes, desperate to promise her he'd be there forever. But Victoria Ashford's question echoed in his mind. Is one woman truly worth sacrificing all of this? He began, but then his voice failed him. Rachel noticed his pause. She saw the doubt flicker in his eyes, and a wall came down behind her own. I thought so, she murmured. Rachel, just wait a second. I need to go. I have an interview in an hour. Please just let me tell you. There's nothing left to say, she said as she grabbed her purse. You are a wonderful man, Michael Carter. You're so kind and giving, and for a little while you made me dream of things I had long since given up on. But we just aren't meant for each other. We can both see that. I don't see that. Yes, you do. You paused. That told me everything I needed to know. She rose up on her toes and gave him a soft kiss on the cheek. Take good care of yourself. Find a woman who belongs in your world. I hope you're happy. And then she turned and left. Michael was frozen in his place, just watching her walk away. He knew he should be running after her. He should be telling her about Victoria Ashford, the ultimatum, the impossible situation he was trapped in. He should be putting up a fight for her, the kind of fight she deserved. But he stayed put because what if she was right? What if their worlds were just too far apart? What if trying to make this work would only cause her more pain in the long run? Michael remained on the bench long after Rachel was gone, just staring out at the harbor, feeling more isolated than he had in a very long time. His phone began to ring. It was his lawyer. Michael, we have to discuss the hospital contract. There are some new questions from the city council. Michael took the call, went back to the office, and threw himself into a storm of spreadsheets, meetings, and the relentless pressures of a life he had constructed but never truly desired. 2 weeks went by, Christmas drew near, and Charleston slowly transformed into a place of pure magic. Strings of lights were draped over the streets, festive wreaths hung on every door, and the air was filled with the scent of pralines and hot cocoa. Michael simply went along with it all, showing up at holiday functions, forcing smiles for pictures, and engaging in empty chatter with people who held no interest for him. His thoughts were constantly on Rachel. He wondered if she ever got a job. He wondered about Jaden. He wondered if she ever thought of him. But his phone remained silent. The city council finally gave its approval for the hospital contract, a $50 million deal for artificial intelligence medical software that was set to completely change healthcare in Charleston. Michael should have been overjoyed. Instead, he just felt empty. A congratulatory note arrived from Victoria Ashford. Michael tossed it into the garbage can without even finishing the first sentence. On Christmas Eve, Michael found himself sitting all alone in his penthouse, staring at an artificial tree his assistant had picked out, decorated to perfection and utterly cold and lifeless. He had ordered some gifts for Jaden from Amazon, a few books on dinosaurs, but purposefully left off the return address, uncertain if Rachel would even permit the boy to have them. His phone vibrated. It was a text from his sister out in California. "Merry Christmas. Wish you could have made it. Love you." Michael just stared at the message. His sister kept a whole country between them and their parents because she couldn't bear to be near them either. They only messaged a handful of times a year, always light, always guarded. He typed back, "Love you too. Maybe next year." It was a lie they both understood. Michael poured a whiskey he didn't even want and walked over to his windows. The lights of Charleston sparkled below a city brimming with families and happiness and people who had managed to build actual lives. He knew he'd lost Rachel out of pure fear. Fear of what people would say. Fear of the criticism. Fear of standing up for something that truly mattered, because it was just so much easier to let her go. His whole life had been an exercise in being afraid and putting up walls and shielding himself from disappointment. For what? So he could end up alone in a sterile apartment on Christmas Eve, drinking bourbon and pretending the cavernous emptiness didn't sting. Michael lowered his glass. The decision he'd made 2 weeks ago was that of a coward. It was a choice that had shielded his company, his standing, and everything he had built. But the cost was the only genuine thing he had ever possessed. It couldn't be too late. He had to be able to fix this. Then again, maybe she was gone from his life for good. There was only one way to be sure. Michael grabbed his keys and made for the door. When he pulled up to Rachel's apartment at 9 o'clock on Christmas Eve, the place was dark. He knocked anyway, paused, then knocked a second time. Silence. "They're not here," a voice said from behind him. Michael turned to see an elderly woman standing in the adjacent doorway. "You looking for Rachel and Jaden?" "Yes. Do you have any idea where they are?" The woman inspected him with piercing eyes. "You're that wealthy man she's been so down about." Michael winced. "Yeah, that's me." "Broke her heart, did you?" "I'm here to try and fix it." "A little later for that." But the woman's hard expression seemed to soften just a bit. They went to the Christmas Eve service at St. Michael's. They've gone every single year since they moved in. "Thank you." As Michael turned to go, she called out, "Young man." He paused. "Rachel is a wonderful woman, the best sort there is. If you hurt her again, I'll hear about it. And I'm at an age where I don't mind a jail cell for assault." Despite it all, Michael couldn't help but smile. "I believe you." "Good. Now go get your girl before she figures out you're more trouble than you're worth." St. Michael's Church was packed to the gills when Michael got there, standing room only. The service was in full swing with hymns, candlelight, and the mingling scents of pine and old wood. Standing near the back, Michael scanned the pews. He finally found them toward the middle, Rachel, with an arm around Jaden, both of them singing along. Rachel had on a deep burgundy dress he'd never seen, and she'd done her hair differently. She looked incredible. She always did. Michael stood there through the rest of the service, through the communion, the final prayers, and the last hymn as everyone departed. When the congregation began to file out, he placed himself by the doorway where she would be forced to see him. She stopped short, and Jaden bumped into the back of her legs. "Michael," she whispered. "Hi." Suddenly, Michael couldn't think of a single thing to say. All the speeches he'd prepared evaporated. "Can we talk? It's Christmas Eve." "I know, it's late, and I'm sure I'm the last person you want to see, but I really need to tell you something, please." Rachel glanced at Jaden, then back to Michael. "Fine, 5 minutes." They went outside, leaving Jaden with Rachel's elderly neighbor, who had apparently been at the service as well. The church garden was quiet and peaceful, lit by strings of simple white lights. "I am so sorry," Michael said, "for letting you walk away, for not fighting for you, for being a complete coward." Rachel crossed her arms over her chest. "Is that what you came all the way here to say?" "No. I came to say that you were right about every single thing. About how I can't possibly understand financial struggles. About our worlds being completely different. about how I tried to fix all your problems instead of seeing that you needed to solve them yourself. Okay, so you're agreeing we were doomed from the start? No, I disagree 100%. Michael took a deep breath. I think our differences are what could make us stronger, not weaker. I think you make me want to be better, and I hope I can do the same for you. I think what we have is special and real, and that it's worth fighting for. Rachel's guarded expression gave nothing away. So why didn't you fight 2 weeks ago? Why did you freeze when I asked if you were really in this? This was the moment. The truth he should have offered her from day one. Michael told her everything. He described Victoria Ashford's visit, the threats she made against the hospital contract, and the impossible choice he felt he had to make. He told Rachel about the patients who relied on that software, the lives hanging in the balance, and how he deluded himself into thinking that letting her go was the noble path. But it wasn't noble, he finished. It was selfish. I was protecting myself, not you. I was choosing what was safe over taking a risk, and my image over something of substance. I was living by my parents' rules, not by what I knew deep down was right. Rachel didn't say anything for a while. What was the turning point? I was all alone in my apartment on Christmas Eve, nursing a whiskey and despising my life. And then it hit me. What did that I have spent 34 years meticulously crafting a perfect life that only exists on paper? I've amassed $1 billion, run a thriving company, and earned all the respect and accolades I was ever supposed to covet, and I have never been more profoundly empty. Michael stepped closer, near enough to catch the golden flecks in Rachel's irises. Then you came into my life, and I suddenly recalled what happiness felt like, what a genuine laugh sounded like, and what it was to look forward to the next day just on the off chance I might see you. You and Jaden, you both made me realize that life should be about people, not accomplishments, and about connection, not perfection. Rachel, I'm in love with you. He said it plainly, honestly. I realize how fast this is, how complicated it is, and that we still have 1,000 issues to resolve, but I love you, Rachel Morgan. I love your resilience and your independence, and the way you can make boxed macaroni and cheese taste like a gourmet feast because you pour your heart into it. I love the grace and patience you have when you're parenting Jaden. I love that you manage to see the absolute best in people, even when they haven't earned it. Rachel's eyes glistened with tears. You love me that much. It scares me to death because I've never had feelings like this for anyone. I've never wanted to forge a life with somebody. I've never imagined being the person someone comes home to. But I want every bit of that with you. And what about Victoria Ashford? The threats. Let her do her worst. I'll battle her in court if it comes to that. I'll take it to the media. I will do whatever is necessary. Michael took hold of Rachel's hands. I made the wrong choice before. I chose the safe path instead of choosing you. I refuse to make that same mistake twice. The hospital contract will either materialize or it won't. If it falls through, I'll find another avenue to help those patients, but I am not sacrificing you for it. Not this time. Never again. Rachel was openly weeping now, and Michael gently brushed her tears away with his thumbs. I don't need you to rescue me, she said. I need you to stand with me while I rescue myself. I know, and I will. However much time it takes, whatever you require, I will be there. I found a job, Rachel said abruptly, at a restaurant, in the kitchen to be exact. The head chef took a gamble on me after I mentioned I'd been to culinary school. It isn't a lot, but it's a beginning. And he mentioned that if I'm any good, there could be room for advancement. Rachel, that is fantastic. I did it by myself. With no help, no money, I actually did it. She smiled right through her tears, and it feels incredible. I am so proud of you. I know we still have our issues. I know this journey won't be simple. Your world and my world are still poles apart. Then we will just have to build a new world, Michael replied. One that is ours alone. We will figure things out along the way. That is utterly terrifying. Yes, but maybe that's all right. Perhaps the best things in life are meant to be a little bit scary. Rachel stared at him for a long moment, studying his features as if committing them to memory. Then her lips curved into a genuine smile, and Michael felt as if he could finally breathe again. Okay, she said. Okay, all right, let's give this a try. Let's build that new world of ours together and see where it leads. Michael gathered her into his arms, holding her tightly, and breathed in the sweet vanilla from her hair. She fit against him as if she were made to be there. I love you too, Rachel whispered against his shirt, just in case there was any confusion. Say it one more time anyway. I love you, Michael Carter, you absurd, big-hearted, wonderful man. They shared a kiss, then gentle and tender, with the Christmas Eve lights glowing around them, and it felt like finding his way home. Mom Jaden's voice cut in. Michael, what is going on? They pulled away to see Jaden gazing at them, his eyes wide with a massive grin. Are you two back together again? He asked with a hopeful tone, because that would be the best Christmas gift ever. Rachel laughed. Yes, sweetie, we are back together. Yes. Jaden pumped a fist in the air. Can we go over to Michael's apartment to play video games? It is 9:30 on Christmas Eve, please. Jaden shifted his gaze to Michael. You have the good snacks. Michael glanced over at Rachel, who just shrugged and smiled. Why not? It is Christmas. And so they headed back to Michael's apartment. Rachel and Jaden rode in Michael's car, cruising past Charleston's holiday lights. And for the very first time since Michael had taken up residence in his penthouse, it felt like home. Christmas morning dawned crisp and cold, and Michael awoke on his couch to Jaden splayed out on his chest like a starfish. Rachel was curled up in the adjacent armchair wrapped in the throw blanket Michael's interior designer had insisted on because it matched the decor. They had drifted off to sleep while watching holiday movies around midnight, utterly exhausted and happy, and Michael had never experienced a better Christmas morning in his entire life. You are awake, Rachel murmured. She was already up observing them with a soft smile. Barely. Your son is deceptively heavy. He inherits that from his father's fartbine. I am delicate. She was teasing him, and Michael adored it. Jaden began to stir, blinked his eyes open, and took in his surroundings. It is Christmas, he declared. Did Santa come to this place? I'm not sure, buddy. Do you want to go check? The night before, after Jaden was sound asleep, Michael had spent a couple of hours arranging presents under his tree, keeping things thoughtful rather than over the top. He had learned his lesson about overwhelming Rachel. These were meaningful gifts instead. There were books for Jaden, a telescope to explore the stars, new art materials for Rachel, a cookbook from her most loved chef, a warm winter coat to replace her worn-out canvas one, and a single small box that made him anxious. Michael, Rachel whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the pile of gifts. This is far too much. It's Christmas, he replied. On Christmas, there's no such thing as too much. They took their time opening the presents, appreciating every single one. Jaden was thrilled with the telescope and immediately wanted to assemble it, even though it was broad daylight. Rachel adored the cookbook, tracing her fingers across the pages with an air of near reverence. Finally, she reached the little box. She opened it with care and discovered a necklace inside a delicate silver pendant designed like an open book. On its pages, tiny words were engraved. Build your own story, she read aloud softly. Michael, I wanted you to have a reminder of who you really are, he explained, not who someone else expects you to be. You're the author of your own life, Rachel. I'm just incredibly thankful I get to be a part of some of the chapters. She closed the distance and kissed him a long, sweet kiss, completely ignoring Jaden's dramatic gagging noises from across the room. I have something for you too, Rachel announced, retrieving a wrapped gift. It isn't a lot. I don't care, he said. I'll cherish it. He carefully unwrapped the paper. It was a framed picture of the three of them from Thanksgiving, a moment Michael couldn't even recall being photographed. They were all in his kitchen, dusted with flour and roaring with laughter about something. Jaden was pulling a silly face and Rachel's eyes were sparkling with pure happiness. Michael thought he looked more content than he'd ever seen himself. Beneath the image, Rachel had inscribed in her neat script, "Home is people, not places." A lump formed in Michael's throat. It's perfect, thank you. Their Christmas day was spent doing wonderfully unimportant things. They made breakfast as a team, with Jaden officially declaring himself the head bacon flipper. They watched movies, put together the telescope on Michael's balcony, and ended up looking at clouds since the stars were hidden by the daylight. They played board games, and when no one wanted to cook, ordered in Chinese food for dinner. The day was simple, filled with domestic comfort, and utterly perfect. With January came Rachel's first full month working at her new restaurant. Michael saw her flourish, saw her return home tired but energized, bubbling with stories of new methods she was picking up and recipes she was eager to test. The head chef says I have instincts, she shared with Michael one evening as they prepared a meal together in his kitchen. She had started leaving ingredients at his place, even taking over a cabinet for her collection of spices. He says that for most people, layering flavors is something they have to learn. But for me, he just knows. You're incredible. I've been telling you that from the start. You're biased, she teased. Completely. But that doesn't mean I'm not right. They found their groove. Since Rachel worked in the evenings, Michael rearranged his own schedule to keep his mornings open. He would get Jaden from school, help him with his homework, and they'd spend time together until Rachel returned. Their weekends were spent as a trio building something that felt more and more like a real family. Michael got to know Rachel's neighbors, learning their names and hearing their stories. He began volunteering at Jaden's school in the computer lab, discovering he was actually quite good with kids once he allowed himself to try. He learned the little quirks of Rachel's apartment, the specific way to handle the sticky front door, and the precise angle needed to turn the shower handle. Rachel, in turn, began to fit into his world. She attended a company dinner with him, stunning in the burgundy dress from Christmas Eve, and effortlessly won over every person she spoke to. Michael observed as she engaged his board members in conversations about the history of Charleston food and literature. He saw how they leaned in, captivated and genuinely fascinated by what she had to say. "Your girlfriend is an absolute delight," one of the board members mentioned to Michael later. "And frankly, terrifying. She knew more about the history of my own hometown than I do. She's certainly full of surprises." Victoria Ashford made one final attempt to stir up drama, appearing at a charity gala that Michael and Rachel were attending. She passed by and made a catty remark about Rachel's dress, loud enough for others to overhear. Rachel simply smiled pleasantly and said, "I found this at a thrift shop for $15, but I'm so happy you appreciate it. I hear it's a vintage Dior, which would mean it's likely worth more than you spent on your own dress. Life is funny that way." Victoria made a hasty exit not long after, and Michael felt himself fall for Rachel just a little bit more. The hospital contract moved forward seamlessly. The AI software went live in March, and soon Michael was receiving emails from doctors and patients expressing their gratitude. People's lives were being saved. The quality of healthcare was on the rise, and he had managed it all without having to give up Rachel. Spring arrived in Charleston, ushering in blooming flowers, warm air, and the return of tourists to the city. Michael and Rachel had been a couple for 6 months, and he could hardly recall what life was like before she entered it. On a Saturday in April, Michael finally took Rachel and Jaden to the Battery, her favorite spot in all of Charleston, a place he had never gone to until she came into his life. As they meandered along the seawall with their hands intertwined, Jaden raced on ahead to get a better look at the cannons. "You were absolutely right," Michael admitted. "This place has a certain magic to it." "See, I told you," Rachel replied, giving his hand a gentle squeeze. "The view from here just changes. Everything makes it all seem better." They settled onto an empty bench to watch the water as Jaden happily splashed around in some nearby tide pools. "I need to ask you something," Michael began. "Okay." He shifted to face her, a sudden wave of nerves washing over him. "These past 6 months have been the happiest of my entire life. Both you and Jaden have completely turned my world around. You've helped me see everything I never knew I was missing and what I truly want." Michael, just let me finish. "I realize this is moving fast, and I know we're still getting to know each other, but I've never been more certain about anything about you and about us." He reached into his coat pocket and took out a small box. "Rachel Morgan, will you marry me?" Rachel's eyes were fixed on the open box and the ring nestled inside. It was simple and understated with a single diamond. He knew her well enough to know she'd despise anything ostentatious. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You don't need to answer right away. I know you'll need time to process this." "Yes, and I would totally get it if this is too much too soon." "Wait, what?" "Yes." Rachel was a mess of happy tears and smiles. "Yes, I will marry you." Michael gently slid the ring onto her finger before kissing her and pulling her into a tight embrace. "For real, really?" "Oh, you ridiculous man. Did you actually think I would say no? I thought you might want to take things slow, be practical, and have a nice long engagement. I have spent 8 years of my life being practical. I am so over being practical." She kissed him once more. "I love you so much. I want to start our life together." "What's the point in waiting, Mom?" Jaden came sprinting over. "Why are you crying, Michael? What did you do?" "I just asked your mom to marry me," Michael explained. "How would you feel about that?" Jaden's eyes grew wide. "You're going to be my dad if you'll have me." Jaden threw himself at Michael, wrapping him in a hug so powerful it nearly toppled them both from the bench. "Yes, yes, this is the greatest day ever." Rachel found herself laughing and crying all at once. And as Michael held them both, this family that he stumbled upon in the frozen food section of a grocery store, he felt truly whole for the first time ever. They were married in September, an intimate ceremony at St. Michael's with only their nearest and dearest. Jaden served as the ring bearer, a responsibility he took very seriously. Rachel was a vision in a simple white dress, looking like something out of a fairy tale. Michael's sister flew all the way from California and cried through the entire service. His parents did not attend. They had made their objections perfectly clear when Michael called to share the news of their engagement. Michael, however, had stopped seeking their approval right around the moment Rachel said yes. That fall, they bought a house together, not a flashy penthouse, but a real home in a neighborhood conveniently close to Jaden's school. It featured a yard where Jaden could play, a large kitchen for Rachel to create in, and a proper home office for Michael. While it needed some updating and had its share of quirks, the most important thing was that it belonged to them. Rachel stayed on at the restaurant, working her way up to the position of sous chef, while Michael established a foundation dedicated to providing healthcare access in underserved areas. Jaden flourished at his school, making lots of friends and continuing his deep fascination with dinosaurs. They were building a life that wasn't perfect, but it was genuine. Sometimes they would argue about money. Rachel still found it hard to accept help from others. And Michael's instinct was still to try and fix every single problem. But they were learning to work through it all, to talk openly, and to find a middle ground. On Thanksgiving, exactly 1 year after they had met, Rachel was preparing a feast in their new home. The table was packed with Jaden, Michael, Rachel's old neighbors, some of Michael's work colleagues who had become true friends, his sister and her family. "I'd like to say a few words," Rachel announced once everyone was seated. "Around this time last year, I was standing in the middle of a supermarket trying to figure out how I was going to afford even a small chicken for Thanksgiving. I was penniless, terrified, and convinced I was failing as a parent." Her eyes met Michael's across the table. "Then this absurdly charming man bumped into me with his cart to ask for help with a turkey. And my life has never been the same." "You changed mine too," Michael said softly. "I know. We changed each other's," she said, raising her glass. "So I want to propose a toast. To chance meetings, to taking risks, to being brave enough to let someone in, and to building a life that is real instead of one that is perfect." "To real over perfect," the room echoed. They spent the rest of the evening eating, laughing, and sharing stories. And as Michael looked around the table at his wife, his son, and the family they were creating together, he knew he had finally grasped what truly mattered. It wasn't money or success or perfection. It was just this love, this life, these people, and the home they were building together, brick by brick, meal by meal, and day by day. Jaden was now 12, all lanky limbs, and a voice that was starting to crack. He was still captivated by dinosaurs, but had added coding to his list of interests, a skill Michael had taught him. He and Michael would spend their Saturday mornings crafting websites and apps, working together while Rachel cooked breakfast and playfully rolled her eyes at their matching bedhead. The previous year, Rachel had opened her own restaurant, a cozy little place on King Street that served simple, flawless food made with heart. Food critics couldn't stop raving about it, and the local community regarded it as Charleston's most prized hidden gem. No matter how demanding her days were, Rachel always came back to her family at night. Her priorities were set in stone. Michael had distanced himself from the day-to-day grind at Carter Industries, pouring his energy into his foundation and into being truly present for his family. He'd come to realize that amassing a fortune was meaningless if you didn't have someone to share your world with. Thanksgiving remained their cherished tradition, hosted at their house, where the table seemed to stretch longer each year to welcome their ever-growing chosen family. Michael was always in charge of the turkey, a craft he had perfected over time, leaving Rachel to orchestrate the feast of side dishes. On the morning of Thanksgiving, 3 years after their first meeting in that grocery store, Michael was up before dawn to get the bird started. Rachel discovered him in the kitchen and silently slipped her arms around him from behind. "Happy Thanksgiving," she whispered into his back. He turned inside her embrace to kiss her forehead, murmuring, "Happy Thanksgiving to you. Thank you for everything. For taking a risk on me, for saying yes, for creating this life with me. And thank you for buying my chicken that day." Michael chuckled. "Best $7 I ever spent." "That turkey is going to be ashes if you're not careful," Rachel pointed out. "Right, turkey. Critical." But he held on to her a moment longer. Just then, Jaden wandered in, looking barely awake. "Are you two being all sentimental again?" "Always," Michael answered, pulling his son into the group hug. "You better get used to it." The three of them stood together in the heart of their home, a quiet moment, as the turkey-roasted Charleston stirred to life outside and their own messy, real, imperfect, and utterly magnificent life continued around them. It all began with Rachel Morgan walking into a supermarket without enough money for a turkey for her son, and Michael Carter, a lonely billionaire who had no idea how to cook. What they built together was something neither knew. They had been looking for a true home. And every Thanksgiving that followed, they would share the story of how they first met, how a chance encounter by the frozen poultry led to the deepest love either had ever imagined. Because every so often, the most wonderful things in life begin with one person asking for a little help. And sometimes having the courage to say yes changes your entire world.